All right, let's just jump right in. We're all surrounded by AI, right? These algorithms that seem to know exactly what we want, sometimes even before we do. But here's the question. What if their real job isn't just to predict our future, but to actually shape it?
I mean, that's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? The idea that some piece of software could already have your entire next day, your next move, all mapped out. And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi concept. This is the actual core business model for some of the biggest, most powerful companies on the planet. Seriously, think about it. Tech giants like Google, their whole empire isn't just built on organizing information. Their real success comes from being incredibly good at predicting what you're going to click on, what you're going to buy, where you're going to go. But this whole prediction game, well, it has this really strange, really powerful side effect. And this side effect, it actually has a name. It's called the performative loop. And it's a concept that gets right to the heart of where that line between just observing the future and actually creating it gets, well, it gets really, really blurry. So here's the key thing to understand. A performative prediction isn't like a weather forecast, which is just a passive guess about what might happen. No, this is an active forecast. The very act of making the prediction kicks off a chain of events that changes the outcome. It's a feedback loop.
Okay, so what you're saying here, this is basically the engine of that loop in action. It starts with a model making a prediction. That prediction leads to a decision. That decision then goes out and changes the real world, which creates brand new data. And that new data? You guessed it, it gets fed right back into the model to retrain it. It just creates this powerful, self-reinforcing cycle. So let's just walk through this one more time, step by step. 1. The model makes a forecast. 2. Someone or something makes a decision based on that forecast. 3. People out in the world react to that action. And 4, and this is the absolute kicker, that reaction creates a new data reality, a new truth that gets sucked right back into the AI, and boom, the loop is complete.
This is basically a high-tech version of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's make it real. Imagine an algorithm says you're a high-risk borrower. So what does the bank do? It slaps you with a higher interest rate. Now, of course, it's harder for you to pay it back, so if you end up defaulting, the algorithm gets to say, "See, told you so." But was it right, or did its prediction literally cause the very thing it predicted? And look, this isn't just some abstract problem for banks and loans. This exact dynamic is already at work in some of the most critical parts of our lives, making decisions that can affect your life, your freedom, your opportunities. I mean, we're talking about incredibly high-stakes stuff here. In criminal justice, AI is predicting where crime might happen or who might reoffend. In healthcare, it's forecasting who might get readmitted to a hospital or even their risk of dying. It's in finance, deciding your credit score. It's even in employment, screening you for a job. When the predictions themselves can nudge these outcomes one way or another, the consequences are just massive.
So, you gotta ask, right? What happens when these super powerful predictions go wrong? Because once these feedback loops get going, they open up a whole spectrum of really serious risks.
This chart kind of breaks down the risks into two big buckets. On one side, you've got your technical failures. The model just stops being accurate. But on the other side, that's where you find the really deep ethical and societal harms. And that's where people can get really hurt.
So it turns out these feedback loops can actually go in two different directions. On the one hand, you have the self-fulfilling prophecy. A model predicts a patient has a high mortality risk, so maybe they get less care, which, well, it causes the very thing that was predicted. But on the other hand, it can be self-negating. A model predicts a high risk of hospital readmission, so the team gives that patient extra follow-up care, which then prevents the readmission. And suddenly, the model's original prediction looks like it was wrong, even though it triggered the right intervention. And this right here, this leads to one of the biggest, most dangerous risks for society. You have to remember, these AIs learn from past data. So if our history is full of bias, in policing or hiring or healthcare, the model just learns that bias as a fact. It then takes that unfair past and projects it onto the future. It's like it's fossilizing our old inequalities, locking them in place and making them almost impossible to escape. So all of this, it brings us to a really fundamental and, frankly, a pretty uncomfortable question about what these AI systems are really doing. You've probably heard this quote before, but it absolutely nails the heart of performative prediction. These systems are not just some passive crystal ball looking at what's to come. By nudging our decisions and changing our environment, they are active participants in creating the very future they claim they're just forecasting. I mean, just let that sink in for a second.
These predictions, they're wrapped in all this complex math, so they feel super objective and neutral, right? But the moment they're used to make a decision about a person, they become an exercise of power. They're tools that actively shape our reality, usually in a way that benefits the people or companies using them.
And the more we lean on these systems, the closer we get to what some people are calling a prediction society. And what is that? It's a world where our futures are kind of pre-written for us, all based on our past data. And our own agency, our ability to make a different choice, to change course, to surprise everyone, that just gets treated like static, like a statistical error that needs to be ironed out.
So it all comes down to this. When an AI forecasts your future, and then actions are taken that help make that forecast come true, what are we actually looking at? Is it just a really, really smart prediction? Or is it something else entirely? A quiet,